Hey everybody, I'm back at the vaults with another video for you. This time we've got 3 different versions of the same song. It's going to be Whitesnake's Here I Go Again. We've got the original version from 1982 with a solo from Bernie Marsden. Then in 1987 we've got Adrian Vandenberg solo, and then a little later in 87, Dann Huff solo. We're going to check out all 3 and see how those different guys approach the solo section. As you can hear, all 3 guys take kind of a different approach to this solo, but there are some similarities as well. First of all, it's over the same chord sequence each time, so let's take a look at that. So the song and the solo is in the key of G major. It's all over a G pedal in the bass. We've got some different chords going over the top of it. We've got a G chord to start on. Then a D chord with a G in the bass. Followed by a C chord with, again, a G in the bass. So always that G at the bottom, but the harmony on top is changing. And that's how we're going to create some really cool melodies. At the end of the solo, the chords change a little bit. We've got our G major again, then D over F sharp, then E minor, followed by C major, G over B, and a finishing on A minor into the next section. It's important that we're aware of those chord changes because that harmony is going to affect our note choice when we do the solo. So for the Marsden solo, we take more of a traditional kind of approach. You'll have heard that the amplifier is pretty much set to clean, there's not much drive there. Also, things like your vibrato is quite shallow and quite subtle. And the way that we play the scales, the way we arrange the notes on the neck is going to be more of a traditional way as well. Just before we dive into the solo, let's check out the scale that he's using. As you know, we're in the key of G major, which has a relative minor of E minor, so we're going to check out the E natural minor scale. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Rather than starting on beat 1, this solo leads us into beat 1 with this pre-bend idea. We're going to pre-bend an F sharp, that's fret 14 on the E string. So it sounds like fret 15, the G. We release that bend and then cross over to our D notes, that's 15 on the B string, which lands on beat number 1 of the bar. Thinking about your chord tones here, because it's a G chord in the first bar, this D note is the 5th, which is why we choose to land on it on the strong beat number 1. From there, we play through the scale on the B string before changing to the G string, going from F sharp and resolving to the G note. The chord by this point is a chord of C, so G again is the 5th in a C chord. That opening section, 1, 2, 3, 4. We then get the same idea for the next phrase. When we get to the top note on the B string, we're going to slide out of position up to fret 17 on the B. And we play 15 and 17 on the E string. You can think of this as the G major pentatonic shape. We then change position again. This time you can think of the G major scale, but starting with a G note on the B string. So fret number 20 is your G, your root note. And we can play 5 notes through the scale before we kind of run out of space. So they're the notes we're going to use in this little phrase. It starts on the 4th note of the scale, which is your C, fret number 20 of the E string. That's going to be pre-bent and then released, alternating between the B and the C note, so that's 19 and 20 on the E string again. Once we've done that, we slide into our G note on the B string. Just to finish things off, we're back into the G major pentatonic kind of area. We've got 15 and 17 this time on the B string. Jumping down into your E natural minor position, so fret 13 and 12 on the B string. Then we're going to slide up 13 to 15 on the B and resolving back on 13 of the B string. We wrap things up with this pentatonic idea. You can think of E minor pentatonic, shape number 1. Just watch out for that hammer on the D string. That's it for the 1982 solo. There is a harmony guitar which plays throughout, but we're not going to look at that today. This one is probably the easiest of the three to get started on, but you still need to be careful that you're playing it accurately and you've got that really nice phrasing, good vibrato and all that kind of stuff. Okay, let's move on to Adrian Vandenberg solo from the 1987 album. So Vandenberg takes a much more aggressive approach to his solo, in keeping with the sound of the 1987 album. So we've got loads of distortion already from the amp, plus distortion from our pedals. We've also got loads of delay and really aggressive wide vibrato. That's all adding to that 1980s excess kind of vibe. Our scale's going to be exactly the same, but this time we're going to take a 3-note per string approach. So let's check out G major as a 3-note per string scale. So just like with the Marsden solo, we're not going to start on beat number 1 just to keep things interesting. Instead, we start on beat 2 this time. We're going to play our 3 scale notes on the G string before sliding into fret number 7 on the D string. So if you think about our chord changes for a minute, we've got our G chord. And then when we go to fret number 7 in our melody, it changes to a chord of D. So fret 7 on the D string, as you can see, is part of that D major bar chord. Or if you think about the note name, it's an A note, and A is the 5th in a D chord, so it's clearly a chord tone there. So in the next part, we're still using the notes from the same scale, the same area of the neck that we've already been looking at. The fingers might be slightly different to the way you played them in the scale because of the techniques he's using. Maybe he's bending or sliding around, so the fingers will be different, but the notes will be the same. This next section, we've got our bend on the B string, and we resolve to fret number 5 on the G string. Again, by this time we've got a chord of C, and fret 5 on the G string is a C note, so the root note, obviously a chord tone in that C chord. Alright, let me show you how these melody notes fit against the chords. Remember, the important chord tones we're listening out for are the A, which is the fret 7 of the D string, and then the C, which is the note that we end on. So here it is with the chords. There's your A, and your C at the end. So A, the 5th note in our D chord, and C, the root note as it changes to C. One more time. Then moving into the next section, we're playing in the kind of E natural minor area that Bernie Marsden was using in the first solo. Starting on the D string, working through the G string notes. We then slide up on the G string up to fret 16. And back to a 3-note per string idea. We're going to be pulling off from 16 to 14 and then again to 12, all on the G string. Resolving on 14 of the G string. Again, this is the A note against the D chord. We then have this arpeggio idea. It's still over the D chord, so we use kind of an E-shaped bar that you'll be familiar with. It's going to be fret 10 of the 6th string to make it a D. And it's just your normal bar chord shape. We're going to start off with the root note on the E string, then the 5th, the octave, and then the major 3rd. From there, we're going to stay on the G string to go to the 5th again, the A, And then staying on the G string still, we're going to bend with finger 1. This is going to be the G note bending to an A. Before resolving back to the G. By this point it's changed to a C chord, and G is the 5th in a chord of C. Again, you can think of that G as the 5th note in a C chord, or if you can visualise a C chord on the neck, you can see clearly that that G is part of it. We're coming up to the tricky run that ends the solo. Just before that though, we have a nice easy pentatonic idea. This would be G major pentatonic, so 15 and 17 of the E string. We're going to bend 17 to 19 on the E, so we end up with a B note, the 3rd in a G chord. Resolving to a D note, 15 on the B string, which is the root note in the D chord. From there, we then run into this monster lick at the end. So our last run is back to this 3-note per string scale idea. We're in the same key, it's still in the key of G, so it's the same scale throughout. We're just going to be moving around the neck. We're going to start off from a C note on the E string, so fret number 8 of the E string. And we're going to start by spacing our fingers 2 frets for each note. Okay, so they're all a tone apart. We then stay on the same string, sticking with the E string. We shift up a tone, so starting on fret 10 instead of fret 8. And again, our fingers are spaced in these 2 fret intervals, so a tone apart each time. So the same shape twice, just moving up on the same string. We then shift up to the A string. We're going to keep the same 3 frets, so 10, 12 and 14. That's 2 fret spacing. Then again, we're going to travel up the same string. We're going to start this time on the A, fret 12. Our spacing is slightly different this time. It starts off with 2 frets and then just 1 fret, so a tone, then a semitone. If we follow through up to there, we then jump straight to the D string and back to this tone spacing, everything 2 frets apart. Straight to the G string, again, same spacing. From the G string, we jump up on the same string again, so up to fret 14, and this time we get our tone, semitone spacing again. So 2 frets, then 1 fret. Jumping onto the B string then. Back to your 2 fret spacing. And the very last note is going to be a bend on the top E string, a B to a C note, so fret number 19, bending to 20. Just watch out for the rhythms in this run. It starts off with these fast 16th notes, but it gradually slows down towards the end. So what we'll do is we'll go to a close-up, stick a metronome on, and you can practice along with me. Okay, so the Vandenberg solo has got the fastest lick in it, so kind of mechanically that might be the most difficult to play. We're going to have to practice it, getting it under your fingers and just getting the speed up, particularly on that final lick. If we look at the Dann Huff solo next, this is from the 1987 remix or the US single version. This one's going to be most difficult because of the different techniques involved. It's the most involved technique-wise. We've got some pinched harmonics, we've got a little bit of work from the bar, and we've got a lot of lateral movement across the neck. Nothing particularly fast, but rather than thinking of scale shapes, we've got our parent key, which is G major or E minor, as you know, but we're going to be kind of unlocking the neck and moving freely across rather than just up and down through positions. Having said that, we can use our scale shapes and positions to get our bearings so we know where we are. So we can think of starting off in E minor pentatonic shape 1, nice and easy. Again, we're not starting on beat number 1, we're going to start this time on beat 4 of the bar, leading us into beat 1. With our notes on the D string, our pentatonic notes on the D string. We then lead into a bend on the G string, that'd be 14 on the G. We bend up, pick a pinched harmonic, and then release that note back down with the harmonic still ringing. You'll probably want to practice that a good few times to make sure that that harmonic is accurate and it sings out every single time. You can use the layout of your guitar to help you as well. For example, on my guitar, I know that the fret 14 pinched harmonic is going to be just kind of at the front edge of this middle pickup. So I know where that is, I can grab it each time, and then it's going to sing out for me every time. If you also make sure you're on your bridge pickup, whack a load of distortion on, then that's going to help bring that harmonic out. After our harmonic, we're going to continue down the G string through the scale. Just descending 3 notes. Then ascending 2 notes before switching to the D string, sliding into fret 14, which is an E note. It's over the C chord, so E is your major third. Once on the D string, we're going to stay on that string, descending another 2 notes of the scale. When it moves to our G chord, we jump to fret 9 on the D string. This is a B note, the major third. We're going to bend up, release, and then resolve to the root note G, which is fret 10 of the A string. From there, the chord changes to D. We're going to play an F sharp on the A string. This time, again, a finger 1 bend, up and release. Before crossing to the root note D, fret 12 of the D string. Straight back onto the A string. We're going to slide to the F sharp and back to an E, fret number 7. By then, we're on a C chord, so E again is the major third. And from that note, we're going to dive with our bar. So let's have a listen to that whole opening section, nice and slowly and close up. 1, 2, 3. So after that dive, we're still over a C chord. We're going to use the C major arpeggio then. We're in triplets. And we're using this arpeggio to get to a G note, which is the root note of our G chord that's coming up next. If we stay with the arpeggio and stay in triplets, we end up on G too soon. So what we're going to do when we get to the top of that arpeggio is switch to the scale. So we play arpeggio E to E. And then switch to the scale. We've got E, F sharp and G, all on the E string. And we're now on our new chord of G. So on this G chord, we're going to bend our G notes up and down before crossing over to a D note on the B string, fret 15. The chord then moves to a D, and we're going to jump to a D note, this time on the E string we'll bend C to D. So bending number 20 to 22. From there, we have more lateral movement on the E string. We bring that bend down. Continue down another scale note. We bend that scale note up and down. And then sticking with the E string, we've got 3 notes, 15, 17, 19. Before resolving on fret number 17, which is an A, the root note of our new A minor chord. So let's hear that second half slowed down and close up. 1 and 2. So that's pretty much the end of our solo. The vocals are going to come back in, but there is a fill that's worth looking at, so we'll check that out too. Again, lots of lateral movement, following the same key and following the chord changes. It starts off over the D chord. So on the B string, we're going to bend 19 up to 20. So this is an F sharp, up to G and back to F sharp again. So that's the major third. Resolve into a D note, the root note, fret 15 of the B string. It then changes to a chord of C. No, it doesn't. It then changes to a chord of A minor. We're going to pick the C note, the minor third, and use the dip of the bar to scoop into it. Carrying on down the scale through a B note, and then changing to fret 14 of the G string for an A, the root note of A minor. A little bit of vibrato from your bar, and then we change to a chord of D. And this time we're going to use a natural harmonic, fret 12 of the D string, so the root note, and just dive that down to finish the whole thing. Let's just hear all that in context so you know how it fits together. Alright, so there you have it, 3 solos for the price of 1. Don't forget to subscribe, practice hard, party hard, and I'll see you next time.